r/AskReddit asks. What are your never meet your heroes stories? I met everything and they were so incredibly arrogant it was unreal. I've met plenty of musicians after shows and were by far the biggest load of cocks. They immediately went from my favorite band to dropping completely off my radar. Aaron Weiss for Me Without You was great though. He jumped into the crowd to hug me during their set. Everything just seemed like a bunch of stuck-up pretty boys that think they're God's gift to women. Even if I was having a bad day or tired, and a fan was excited to meet me, I would still try my best to be genuinely nice for a couple minutes. Is it that hard? We didn't exactly meet, but growing up I loved dinosaurs and I lived in an area famed for having a lot of fossils. In university I began studying paleontology, and I was in awe since my childhood hero, Dr. Philip Currie, was a professor there and I would sometimes see him on campus. One bitterly cold winter day, campus was deserted. As I'm walking all alone through the main quad, listening to music, my guilty pleasure song comes on. So there I am, badly dance walking and lip syncing to the Bad Touch by the Bloodhound Gang. And then I look up, and to my utter horror there is my childhood idol, seeing me at one of my most embarrassing states. Eye contact was unfortunately made, and many years later I still think about that moment as I lie in bed trying to sleep. I met William Shatner last year at a convention. He wasn't bad, he was just very apathetic. I told him even though I am a huge Star Trek fan, I loved him as Denny Crane in Boston Legal the most and that I watched that show with my dad all the time when I still lived at home. He was just like, oh, okay. I met him last year in London. Having heard nothing but bad stories about him being like a cardboard cutout in photos and a printer for autographs, I was pleasantly surprised. He wasn't exactly talkative but he was at least saying hello and acknowledging people. I met Kurt Angle in early 2011 when TNA did a signing at the tax company next to my work. He was so doped up, I feel like he wasn't even there. He barely looked up to acknowledge anybody. Velvet Sky and Tara, Victoria from WWE, were really friendly and having a blast. They tried so hard to save the day. I'm just happy Kurt got clean now. Now that I'm remembering more, they ended up bringing AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels over from another signing to replace Kurt. Yeah man, you gotta feel bad for him though. So many dark years. I think we're all happy he's doing better now. I'm proud to say he sucks again. My son sat opposite Noel Gallagher on a train. Didn't want to be that fan as he probably gets so many people approach him. They both stood to get off the train and just nodded acknowledging each other. Made my son's day. Lol, that might be the first person ever to encounter Noel Gallagher and not find him a life-sized puckering asshole. I met RL Stein, author of Goosebumps, at a book fair in DC a while back. Brought 2 books, The Blob Who Ate Everyone and the one with the people who wore pumpkins as heads. Went up to him and said his work was my stepping stone towards love of horror and thanks for making reading entertaining. He didn't say anything, signed both books, one he didn't even do that legible. I asked if he could write it out to my name and he said he doesn't do that. And said next. All within 20 seconds. The line was like 15 people long. Also the shortest out of all the authors there. Jeff Kinney was there, so everyone was there. I didn't think RL Stein was a person, I'd read it was a brand, and various people churned out the stories. Way back before email, I was a teacher with a class of 10-year-olds doing a fan letter writing project. One girl wrote to RL Stein and got a bumper fun pack reply with posters, cards, etc. It was one of the best responses we got, and other kids wrote extra letters just to get the pack. I know this isn't what you're looking for, but when I was younger, I went to a con where there was a meet and greet for the Phillips twins, Fred and George from Harry Potter. I was super excited to meet them. But, when it came time to get in line and I actually saw them from afar and faced the idea of having to say real human words to them, I was filled with nausea and had to run to the bathroom to puke. Never meet your heroes, kids, it might make you puke for no reason. Bro, you had me worried for a minute that they weren't nice people. The Weasley twins are my favorite characters and it honestly would have bummed me out if they turned out to be rude to fans. I have never heard of like 90% of these people. Same. I'm trying to figure out if I'm the dinosaur or if the people with the stories are the dinosaurs. I had an encounter with Dave Mustaine that was more odd than anything. Me and my friend told him that we loved Megadeth and he seemed apathetic about it. My friend asked about what pedals he uses and he said he didn't know. What? He then made some irrelevant comments about a motorbike he had and then exited, a fart slapping out of his leather pants as he left. He seems pretty genuine to me. I'm surprised then again he could just be putting it on for interviews etc. Never met him so I wouldn't know. I was at a Surrey cricket game when Ricky Ponting played there, one of the best cricketers of all time, and as he was running off a tee, I asked him for a picture and he shoved me aside and said I need a piss, mate. Fair play to him, he probably did. But, I knew a chick who used to bartend at the Players Bar after the games, and she said he was a total wanker. Up himself, and cracking onto so many women, even though he's married. Luckily she reckons Gilly was lovely. I couldn't take learning he's a prat. I met Marc Maron after a show during a comedy festival in Austin. I really loved the show Maron and it helped me better understand what some of the recovering addicts in my family had gone through. I wanted to say hi really badly but he just seemed really uncomfortable and pissed, which was weird because he was just standing unbothered on the sidewalk. It hit me all at once that the disgruntled curmudgeon thing from the show wasn't an act, that he was legitimately just like that and it kinda bummed me out. He didn't do anything wrong to me but it really kinda sucked the fun out of the show for me. I've heard this about Maron too. Met Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead, one of the nicest, most genuine people I have ever talked to. R.I.P. If your heroes are assholes, get better heroes. Have you read Cider with Roadies by Stuart McConey? He was a music journalist and there is a bit in there about interviewing Lemmy and the guitarist in a pub over a pint and he said he was an intelligent, thoughtful and very nice interviewee. When the PR guy tries to end the interview and move him on, Lemmy says, "Will you fuck off? I'm having a nice chat with this lad, sounds like he was a good egg." Tried to meet the Mighty Bush guys outside a live show they did at the peak of their popularity. So did about 300 other teenage fans that were all screaming and moving as one in a big crushing crowd. At first I was caught up in the excitement of seeing them, but pretty quickly it became apparent that they were uncomfortable. Like verging on afraid uncomfortable of this huge screaming mass of people coming at them begging for photos in a small alleyway. I just felt guilty for being part of it. I met Noel Fielding once. He was rolling around on the floor of the club toilets in a puddle of piss. He seemed to be having a great night though. Needless to say this was during the height of his drug addiction. Saw William Shatner at a Comic-Con. Went to his panel. He was a huge dick. This lady from the crowd went to ask a question. Before her question she said, "Your role in Star Trek inspired me to become an engineer." His response was, "I don't care." Then he ignored her question and talked about his motorcycle for 2 hours. I met Ian Watkins of Lost Prophets once. He was a really nice guy, which obviously he isn't after it all came out. Saw the band on 16th of July 2006, waited for the band outside the venue to get my poster signed. I got them all except for Ian, so we all eagerly awaited him and he finally came out and I got him by the tour bus. He signed my poster, took a picture with myself and my brother. Turns out he's a massive nonce. If I hadn't ripped the poster in a fit of rage over an unrelated incident, then that poster would be worth a fortune now. Blew my mind when I found that out, as I'm sure it did everyone's. How fans would give him their babies for him to rape. Just disgusting and heartbreaking. I met Bill Nye in college. I worked at the school paper, and we ran a story on him in the newspaper before he came to speak on campus. He was like, "Those are the pictures you guys chose?" Not nearly as kind as expected. I've heard many stories on Reddit about how he is actually a real asshole. Not quite a never meet your heroes story, but close and really cool. I like writing to authors I've read. I am a big fan of books. I wrote to Dean Koontz, with a ratty copy of Odd Thomas I bought off eBay. I explained to him how much I love that series. I got back the book in the mail signed by him, a note thanking me for the kind words, and then a personal copy of Odd Thomas from his own library signed by him with the words, "Your copy and mine." Goddamn, I was both humbled and shocked, as I didn't really think I'd hear back from him. The man sold 700 million books and seems to still take time to get back to his fans. Really nice guy. I personally know my 2 heroes and met my 3rd. Best parents ever. And grandma was perfect. Wholesome AF. Actually the opposite, I'm a big cycling fan and I went to a cycling race to get an autograph from Wout van Aert. I waited for over an hour surrounded by drunk people. When he returned from the podium, he had to go back to his bus. He took a longer way, right through the crowd to sign my jersey. 10 tenths would wait again. Here's hoping he can bring some more excitement in the sport again. I met Matt Berry, of IT Crowd / Garth Marenghi / Toast of London fame when he played a show with his band in a small club in Newport, South Wales. From the start of the show he was drinking heavily from a bottle of Jack Daniels, and you could tell he was annoyed that the audience of about 40 people were only there because he's the guy from the IT Crowd and not because they care about his music. He played his own stuff as well as one-track Lover and some snuff box music, and despite being drunk he performed well and had some funny banter with the crowd. As the show ended someone in the back said loudly, 15 quid for that? I met him at the merch stand, shook his hand and got a picture. He was pretty drunk and nobody was really buying his merch, you could tell he wasn't too happy. Not the worst story but it was pretty awkward. Carrot Top. Told me I was pretty funny, all sarcastic like. Guess we're both not now, huh? Fuck you, Carrot Top. Well, if it's any consolation he looks weird as fuck now due to what looks like way too much plastic surgery. He was a childhood star of mine. I can remember vividly being on the bus to school daydreaming about his adventures, writing my first essays about him or bringing his movies at the end of my first school years. Then I met him. Ron Jeremy was kind of a dick. One time I met Rob Dyrdek, probably wrong spelling. Back then I was a super fan, I watched all of his shows on MTV and started skating competitively because of him. This was about 6 years into my fandom, so I was ecstatic when I saw Rob, his mom, and Big Black all walking into a convention center. I ran up and told him how he was my inspiration. Yada yada. He literally looked at me with a shit-smelling face on and just said I don't have time to talk before storming away. His mom saw it happen and gave me an apologetic look. After that Big Black came over and talked for about 5 minutes, he was easily the nicest dude I've ever met. R.I.P. Big Black, you were a good man, thumbs up. Went to work at Lionhead. Bad idea. I mean, it didn't help that I was clinically depressed, anxious and suicidal at the time on account of my dad killing himself 3 months before. But still. Hated it. Not sure I should go into much more detail than that, other than to say specific people made my life more miserable than it already was. To be fair, there were a few people who made it okay. And I didn't help myself due to all the mental issues I was having, and it ended badly for me, but still. I had the opportunity to meet Jeffrey Dean Morgan in upstate NY. This was right after he came on The Walking Dead in the season finale. Extremely nice guy, seemed genuinely happy to meet fans. Very down to earth. He and Paul Rudd own a candy store upstate and are both super nice. Oh, and the chocolate does not disappoint. Met 2 of my musical heroes. Amon Tobin, genuinely thankful and appreciative when I told him how much I loved his music. Also met Mike League, the bass player and band leader of Snarky Puppy. Saw him in a street in Melbourne after they played and he invited me and my mate to a bar with the rest of the band. I politely declined though cause I was pretty drunk and didn't want to just irritate them by telling them all how cool I think they are. 2 musicians at the top of their game and they were both humble as pie.